Okay, so we're here. It's lecture time. It's Tuesday. It's Management 4071. I got the right slides, which doesn't always happen. So I'm pretty happy that it is the right deck of slides. Last week, I uploaded slides to a different class, to the announcements for this class, and I went back and I fixed that. So you should have all the correct slides and videos available to you in the announcements. When you submit a written assignment, make sure that you include the cover page completed and that you follow the instructions. And if the instructions call for you to make sure to include citations and references to the textbook or other material, make sure you do so. And if you do on your own refer to textbook or any additional material, make sure that you include the reference and citations. Because if you don't, that costs you points. And I always found it a good practice to try to get as many points as possible. Good evening, how's it going? Good. I haven't seen you in a minute and a half.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so today is week 12, and if everything is working like it's supposed to, we should be in business. There we go. All right, so today we're going to be talking specifically about organizational politics and power. And yes, that is a real thing in organizations, and it's not always a good thing, as you're going to see tonight. To a degree, it can be, if it's applied ethically, it can be beneficial. But if it's one of those things that you can get right on the cusp between ethical and unethical really quick. So you got to be very careful about that, because leadership is already about influencing people. Okay? Management is about making sure people do their work. And when you bring a power and you bring internal politics into the picture, you can actually jump into coercion really quickly. And that is not the best place to be, unless you're in an environment like I was back when I was a sergeant in the Army. We had to use coercion. And as you're going to see, coercion carries with it punishments. But those punishments were equally distributed. I did not have favorites. You can't in a coercive form of leadership. I actually blended servant leadership with authoritarian leadership in that case, and it actually helped to balance out the negative effects of that power imbalance, because there's a power dynamic when you're a leader. And when you're in a job like I was as a sergeant in the military, you have a power imbalance between you and your team. They're privates, they're E4 specialists, corporals, whatever. You're a sergeant. What you say goes. And so you got to be careful not to abuse that power. That's why servant leadership or humble leadership or transformational leadership are excellent styles to include if you find yourself in a position of having to use authoritarian leadership. I highly recommend it. It works. I've seen it work. So inside many organizations, individuals work to influence others using various ways of exercising power. We've talked about the different kinds of power a leader can have, and we're going to go over them again tonight. But a leader has got some form of power. They are able to persuade people. They're able to influence people. They, at times, can coerce people. But what is the motive? Is it for their own selfish agenda? Is it to make themselves look important? Or is it because there's a task or project that must be accomplished, a mission that needs to be completed, and that they are using that power in a way to accomplish that, and in a way that's fair and equitable? I am a huge proponent of diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether it's at the organizational level, the social level, a team level, friendship level. I believe in it because I want to be treated a certain way. Therefore, I should treat others the way I want to be treated. I don't like imbalance of power. And you see that a lot of times where a leader expects certain treatment, but they in return don't give treatment. I like my students to refer to me either as Professor G or Dr. G. My last name is a little complex sometimes to pronounce, and I understand that. But I've got some freshmen that just habitually just call me Mr. G. And I'm like, okay, well, thank you. But I went to school for 10 years. I have a doctorate. And when you talk to your professors, you need to at least call them professor or doctor. Now, in exchange, I should be giving that student respect. I should be giving them the respect that's due to every single human being. But here I've got students, freshmen in a classroom, they're participating in the process of learning. There's an additional respect that goes with that. And I try to make sure that is also given to every single student, regardless of the respect they do or do not give me. But I don't want them going through the next 4 years thinking they can just call their professor Bob. Hey, Bob, how you doing? No, at bare minimum, call that individual a professor. Acknowledge the rank. Now, why am I doing that? Is it even important? Yes, it is. Because you're in a school for business. When you are out in the workforce, moving up the corporate ladder, or even starting your own business, or whatever it is you find yourself doing, you're going to encounter people who have higher levels of leadership than you do, higher levels of authority and power. You just should give them the respect that's due to them. On the same token, you should be given the respect that's due to you by those same individuals and by the team you're leading. And then you give that respect back to your team. So I think respect is something that is a continual thing that should be given amongst colleagues, again, amongst leaders and subordinates. I think the more respect you give your subordinates, the more they're going to go the extra mile. They're going to take time on their own to learn things, to become better at their job. They're going to pay more attention to detail. And that is ultimately what you want them to do anyway. And a good way to get there is just that simple respect giving. So, and also treating everybody fairly and equitably. So the concepts of internal power dynamics and politics are intimately tied to leadership. Black et al. Pointed out the need for those learning organizational behavior, such as yourself in this class, to understand internal power dynamics and politics, because you're going to find yourself in the middle of that very process. You're going to need resources for your team. You're going to have to go to the right people. You're going to have to address them properly. You're going to have to submit the correct paperwork. You're going to have to do things properly to get what you need for your team. In middle management, or actually in management in general, you typically don't have the resources at your fingertips that you can just grab and give to your people. You've got to go to somebody higher than you to obtain those resources and bring them back for your team. That may be going to middle management, or if you're in middle management, going to senior leadership, but you have to go to somebody else to get what you need in most organizations. And in order to do that, you got to know how to kind of play the game of internal power dynamics and politics without being trapped in the pitfalls that come with them. So hopefully after tonight, you'll have a better understanding of that. So what is organizational power? Your textbook turned to Max Weber, who was a German sociologist, in defining power. So your authors of the textbook, they wrote, in quoting Max Weber, the probability that one actor within a social relationship will be able to carry out his own will despite resistance. That's a general definition of power, but that's basically what it is. I, as the leader, know what the mission and vision for my team are, even if I've worked with my team as a unit and we've established what the mission and vision for the next 3, 6, 9 months should be. I'm still the one that's responsible to make sure it gets carried out. So organizational power has to do with the ability to persist in succeeding in the promotion of their agenda while overcoming any potential resistance. In just doing your job as a leader and fulfilling your team's purpose, you are going to meet resistance from people in your team, people in the rest of the organization, the supervisors you have to go to get the resources your team needs. you're gonna meet resistance at every step along the way at some point in time or another. So expect it. And then learn how to navigate it, which is what we're basically talking about tonight. You see on the screen a triangle. At the top, you have power. To the left, you have authority. To the right, you have leadership. And this is Exhibit 13.2 from your textbook. And these are the three major types of influence. Now, a leader can exercise just leadership as their source of power. They can exercise authority, which is usually granted to them by the organization as a whole, or the team as a collective, depending on if you're a formal or informal leader. And then you have power. The power can also come from your team, but more than often, it's going to come from the organization. And that power is the ability to give rewards and punishments in the pursuit of accomplishing the purpose of that team. So when I was a sergeant, I could give rewards to my team. I could put them in for awards. I could write their evals, paying attention, very close attention to really good things they've done, and word them in such a way so that when they go for promotion, they can get the most points that they can towards promotion. I could give them days off, things like that. Punishments I could give them, I could actually make it so that they would lose pay. I couldn't do that directly, but through the chain of command, I could. I could make it so they would lose rank. I could take freedom away from them. But more often than not, I made them do push-ups. It was called smoking them. And for some reason, that's what they called it. So I was smoked a lot. I did a lot of push-ups in my day, not always because I deserved them, but when you're a leader and your team makes a mistake, you get punished, and then you decide if you pass that punishment down to the team or if you just let it end with you. Sometimes I took the punishment and that was it. Sometimes my team really needed to learn a lesson and I passed that punishment on down to them. It was only fair. But I weeded out when to do that. I chose what kind of power to use and wield. If you have access to all three kinds of power, it becomes a balancing act. You don't want to overuse your power and look like a dictator. You don't want to abuse your leadership and your ability to persuade, and you don't want to misuse your authority, because in any way that these are misused, somebody's going to get hurt. And that's never a good place for you to find someone on your team or even yourself. So authority. Black et al. Revealed that authority represents the right to seek compliance by others. The exercise of authority is backed by legitimacy. When I was a sergeant, I was promoted to being a sergeant. I went to a month-long boot camp style school to learn how to be a sergeant. But in order to be promoted, I had to have enough points. My BT scores had to be at a certain point. I had to have awards because I got points for my various awards and ribbons. You got points for your evals. You got points from your commander. You got points from different places. And so you literally had to work to earn it. Once I earned it, I wasn't automatically given the promotion. I was recommended for promotion. Then the Army went ahead and promoted me, sent me to school. Then I got my stripes. Now, I'd already been a team leader as an E4. So I had positional authority, positional power, and I had leadership. But when I put my stripes on, my authority became more legitimate because now I had a rank to back them up. Well, in a civilian organization, you find something similar. If you are chosen by your team to be the leader as an informal leader, they are giving you a type of power, a type of authority, a type of leadership, but it's not necessarily legitimate, meaning it's not coming from a third party above you. The organization can promote you to being a manager. Now remember, management and leadership are two different things. Oftentimes managers should be leaders, but they're not necessarily. But if you are promoted into a position of authority by your organization, you've got a form of legitimate power now, legitimate authority, legitimate leadership, formal leadership. And it carries with it more weight. Because now when you're filling out the evals, now when you're talking to the supervisors about disciplinary problems, you've got the weight of that position behind you. On the same token, you can abuse that position, and that is very unethical. Leadership is the ability of one individual to elicit responses from another person that go beyond required or mechanical compliance. Leadership has a voluntary aspect to it, okay? My team saw me as their leader. I had to earn that. They voluntarily gave me the position of being the leader amongst themselves, even though the unit had decided I was the team sergeant or team leader as an E4. My team still had to accept me in that position. And that acceptance then brought them to a place they allowed themselves to be influenced by me. Now, how did I influence them? When we got what we needed to do for the day down in the motor pool, I would then go to my team and say, this is what we have to do. But I wouldn't just level them with this set of directives and then send them off. I'd go with them. We had to change the oil on a tracked personnel carrier, M113. Well, there's 13 deck bolts, and you got to do it while standing in a pit. And you undo the deck bolts, and you take that deck plate down. The second you do, you're covered in oil. Okay, that's just how it is. I ruined 2 uniforms. I did it the first 2 times. After that, I never did it again. But my team knew that the sergeant was willing to get down there, ruin his uniform, and do the work and get dirty. Sometimes that's one of the best ways to get the team to see you as their leader and to be willing to be influenced by you. They know you're willing to do the work. The other thing I did is when we had to come up with a mission plan, I would get the directives from the commander and I would come back and say, this is what we have to do. And I would take feedback from even the lowest private. Doesn't mean I used that feedback because it may not be useful. But if there was a component that was useful, I would include it in the final plan. That allowed for each person on the team to feel a sense of organizational citizenship. They belonged on the team. They were valued on the team. That also opened them up to willingly being influenced by me. So now, if we were back in garrison and not out in the field or the motor pool or whatever, I could turn to them, I could say something, and they 9 times out of 10 would go do it. Almost 10 times out of 10. They would go do it. I had earned that right in their mind. I had been given the legitimate right to it, but now they gave me the intra-group right or privilege. They would listen to me. I earned it from them. So you've got to earn this from your people. Your organization may hand it to you, but you still have to earn it from those that are your direct reports. Let's look at the types of power. Your textbook discussed 3 main types of power. There's coercive power, and that involves forcing someone to comply with one's wishes. Like I said, that's a double-edged sword. In some settings, that's a useful exercise of power as long as you don't abuse it. In other settings, it is not useful at all because a group of engineers is not going to respond very good to coercive power. They're creatives, and because they're creative, they are better with laissez-faire leadership. Okay, not every group is like that. That's why when you become the leader, you don't make instant change. I would take a month after assuming a leadership position, and I would watch, I'd observe, I'd evaluate, I'd assess everybody, and then the whole team as a collective. Then I would decide what needed to be changed, if anything. And then I would do it slowly. I wouldn't bring in all the changes at once because the best way to boil a frog is you put it in tepid water and you turn the heat up slowly. If you do it too quick, the frog jumps out. People are the same way. If you make change too fast, too quick, too abruptly, they will resist your efforts. So Go at it slowly. And instead of working against them, create it almost like leadership judo, where you're using their momentum to get it accomplished. So now you're not forcing them to, you're working in concert with them and you're just directing them a little bit. And that really can pay off because now your direct reports don't feel that you're coming in, lording your power over them. They feel like you understand you're just an employee, but an employee that has accountability and responsibility, power and authority, etc., but you're not abusing it. You have utilitarian power, and this is based on performance reward contingencies. You do the job, you do it well, you get the reward. In a fair and equitable team environment, you knew what that reward was when you started the project. And you knew what the consequence would be if you didn't. And you willingly engaged to complete the task to a very high standard. So you know, because of expectancy theory and motivation, that you're going to get this reward. Now the leader has to follow through with both the reward and the punishment. If you don't follow through, you erode your own ability to lead. So you got to follow through. You have normative power, and this rests on the beliefs of the members in the right of the organization to govern their behavior. Okay, normative power is often what we think of when we go to our job and our supervisor tells us to do something. Well, that's our boss. He was told by his boss what to do. He's got the right to do that. I should probably do it. Now, unfortunately, not every employee sees it that way. They want the leader to come and ask them to do it, to make a request instead of a demand. In the military, you don't make requests. You tell the person what they're going to do. But that's because when you're in a battlefield situation, if you give an order, it's because there's life or death involved, and that person just needs to act right now because you've got data available to you that they don't. And you build up a trust. In most organizations that aren't life or death scenarios, you don't necessarily need to do that. You can come to a team and you've been told what has to be done. You can say, all right, this is what we need to get done. I'm going to need for you, you, and you. Would you consider getting this task done? And could you be able to get it done in a week? Now, you basically done the same thing as directing them what to do, but you didn't do it in a way that felt like it. You let them feel like you saw their value because you did. You're treating them the way you would want to be treated. Do you enjoy having somebody just tell you what to do and then turn and walk away? Probably not. But you probably are okay with somebody saying, hey, do you mind doing this for me? And hey, listen, if you need some help, just let me know. Because you know you're not alone. You know that person doesn't see themselves as being better than you. They're just another employee with a different title. So where exactly is power grounded? If power is one of the 3 points on that triangle, where is it grounded? Well, there's the concept of the bases of power, and we're going to go through them. You have referent power, and this relates to the leader's level of charisma. How much do you like that person? How much do you want to be associated with that individual? If you respect that person, then you're giving them referent power. So that is a grounding point, a base for power. Expert power. Okay? This is probably what you grant to most of your professors. Your professors are experts in their fields, and you know this. You come into the class, the professor starts teaching, they're showing you, yes, I know what I'm talking about. You have a question, you come to that professor, and you're submitting yourself to their authority, to their power, okay? But it's because you know they got the knowledge. They know what they're talking about in this subject. You don't come to me with questions about the cosmos. I know a little bit about that, but that's not my area of expertise. I'm fascinated by it. And we can have a talk about it, a chat about it, but I'm not going to give you anything that you're not going to get from a much better source. I recommend you to watch Neil deGrasse Tyson. The man is brilliant and an excellent educator. But you come to somebody under expert power, because you know they have the knowledge that you need. There is legitimate power, which we did talk about briefly, and this deals with the right the leader has to exercise power over others and is derived from the organization. My power as a sergeant came from ultimately the United States Army, but indirectly it came from my commander, my first sergeant, from the battalion commander, from these leaders who were part of the process of me getting promoted. So I was given this power from the organization, this authority, versus some of these other forms that you're going to see, such as the reward power. Now, I did have reward power as a sergeant, but this stems from the various rewards the leader has at their disposal to grant others. Oftentimes, you're going to see multiple power bases at play at the same time. For instance, when I was in the Army, there was the expert power. I earned some referent power. I had legitimate power. I had reward power, and I had coercive power. Now, how I mix those together, that was my leadership style. All right. Coercive power. This relates to the ability of the leader to enact punishment when others fail to comply. We talked a few weeks ago about how to teach people, to train people, to help them learn using referent power, using coercive power, for them to change their traits or characteristics, stuff like that. Well, the same thing is true here. That coercive power, there's a place for it, but not every instance is the right place. It depends on the situation, which power base I'm going to pull from in that moment. I'm not going to pull from one and one only perpetually. If I've got legitimate power, great, but I need to earn referent power. If I have knowledge, the knowledge base, so I have expert power, then I've got to earn the referent power. I've got to earn the legitimate power from the organization. And you want to earn these power bases and be granted them because now you have the ability to make more decisions on how you're going to lead people. Leadership is a lifestyle. Management is a position. There's a lot of overlap between them, but remember, that's like the key difference. Leadership is a lifestyle. So based on that piece of information, if I want to effectively lead somebody, I'm going to treat them like I want to be treated. I'm going to approach it from my ethical values while taking into consideration their values. You see, as a leader, you consider the other person a lot more than you do as a manager. When you're a manager, you're concerned about the task, the ultimate purpose, completing that mission. When you're a leader, you're oftentimes worried about that, concerned about that, but the way there is through working with each person as an individual, building up relationship with each person as an individual, knowing each person as individuals. So leadership is also very relational. Black et al. Noted that there are three main behavioral outcomes. Commitment. Now, this is what your team, your direct reports give to you. Commitment. This occurs when the individual accepts the leader's right to exercise power. You become committed to that person. If that person says jump, you literally say how high. You are committed to them. Now, you can also display the behavior of compliance, and this happens when the individual understands that the leader possesses the ability to either reward or punish. Now, if you notice, there's a fear component whenever I say the word punish. Because usually that punishment is something we don't want to experience. So there's a fear component. Do I want my people to feel as though I lead them out of eliciting their fear? No. No. I want them to feel that I'm leading them through eliciting their commitment, their respect, that I have the ability to reward those that perform well, and punish those that don't, but that right there is based upon criteria that they themselves provide me. I've got the criteria. Now they either fulfill it or don't fulfill it. That's up to them. It's like being a student. You can get an A, but you're not going to get an A by not doing the assignment. But you have the choice to not do the assignment. Let's face it, you have that choice. But why do you do the homework? Do you do it for the grades, for the knowledge, or because you got your eye on the prize and you know what you got to do to get that degree? I hope it's the latter, because that shows me you've thought through your goals, you thought through the process there, and you're engaging in a organizational behavior as a student to attain your goal. I'm just part of the process. I'm part of the process to get you there. The assignments are part of the process to get you there. If you find yourself resisting a professor, take a look. Is it their leadership style? Maybe it is. It can be. Or maybe it's your own pride or ego. You don't like being told what to do. Some people are like that. I've had an ex-girlfriend like that. That was weird. But you have to be able to submit yourself to authority, to leadership, to power in order to get what you want. In the job setting, maybe it's the paycheck you're there for. Remember expectancy theory and motivation. And so by complying with the leader and doing good on the tasks you're given, you know that your paycheck is assured and that you're going to be set up for either a promotion or a pay raise at some point. Or perhaps you have a different motivation for being there. Maybe the organization is involved in social justice and you like being a part of that. You like impact, you're working with a nonprofit and you like making people's lives better. Okay, great. Well, by doing what the leader says you need to do to accomplish the task, to accomplish the goal, gets you to your own goal, because your goal and the organization's goals begin to merge together. Because the organization, the for-profit organizations, they're there to make money. That is their goal. I'm not going to lie about that. That is their goal. And if your goal is to make money and their goal is to make money, and you go in there and you're resisting everything they say, your goals are not matched up. But if you go in there and you're willing to comply with the ethical requests that you're given, now your goals and their goals are matching up and you all can make money together. So that's one way to look at it. Now, resistance, this behavior happens when the individual reacts negatively to coercive power. Resistance happens primarily to coercive power. However, I have seen people turning to their professor as an expert source of power, and then they resist that professor. I think that's their ego, their pride, maybe a touch of narcissism. Okay, some people are like that. It does happen. Now that person needs to think through, is this really going to get me to the goal that I set out to achieve? No. Then maybe you need to put that down a little. Maybe you need to become more humble. Sometimes it doesn't feel good to humble ourselves, but it will help us to get to our goal. If our goal means we need to work with others and they've got authority, power over us, then we find ourselves willingly submitting to that because it's in line with our goal. It's going to get us our desired end result. So it becomes par for the course. Your textbook also discussed the conditions necessary for individuals to submit to the leader's power in didactic dynamics. Now, what on earth is a didactic dynamic? Well, Terry, you're the one student in class, so I'm going to use you as an example. This is a didactic dynamic. One person as a leader, one person as a follower or a student or whatever. When you're a leader, you approach each person in a didactic way. That's the essence of transformational leadership, and also leader-member exchange. So you deal with each person, you get to know each person on the team. And then you step back as a leader, metaphorically speaking, and you got to get to know the team as a collective. Because teams, like organizations, will begin to have a personality. Okay? And you, as the leader, need to understand that. But you also got to understand each individual person's personality, their characteristics, their goals, their aspirations, their strengths, their weaknesses. So that didactic aspect is literally that one-on-one between a leader and a follower. And then you move over between the leader and a follower. And you keep going down the line until you've gotten that relationship with each person on the team. Then you establish that a similar relationship with you and the team. And that is a form of didactic relationship because it's one team as a collective and one leader. Unless you got more than one team, in which case now it's the same thing as we were talking about a minute ago. You got to get to know each individual, then that team, go over here, get to know each individual, then get to know that team, and you deal with this team and that team as separate entities, even if they're working on a joint project, because each team will be slightly different. Okay, so conditions necessary for someone to submit. Values. The individual may, that means the direct report, the subordinate, may possess values that create an environment conducive to the submission to the leader's authority. Their personal values, their worldview may be one that's predispositioned to following a leader. Somebody who has military training, somebody who has been very active in their church community or in a social group or in their family, they can actually find that to be very true, where their values, wrong button, their values make it so that they are more likely to submit to the leader's authority and power. You also have the nature of the relationship. Here, the individual and the leader may be in a positive work relationship, which creates a willingness for the individual to submit. In this case, Tyree, you and I have been working at company X, Y, and Z for the last 5 years. We become friends. Occasionally, we go out for pizza after work. We talk at the coffee pot, and we become more than just acquaintances. We're friends at work, and maybe even outside of work. Then you get promoted. Now, I'm not sitting here being bitter about your promotion. I'm your friend. I'm happy for you. But now we engage in the issues pertaining to work, and we have as a foundation that friendship that we built. That's what it's talking about. The nature of the relationship between the direct report, the subordinate, and the leader. And now you've got counterpower. This concept relates to the individual possessing power of their own, which can enable them to mitigate or reduce the strength of the leader's power. So, continuing with you as my example for the day, you and I are both team leads at the organization. We both have very similar power bases. We have teams, but now we've been selected to be on a very specialized team. It's known as a task force. So we come in there, and now we both have power. But I get put in charge of the task force, not you. Now, if you're not happy with how I'm exercising my power and my authority, you have a power base that you can turn to lessen my ability to lead. And sometimes people do this legitimately through power they've earned in the organization. Sometimes they do it through internal politics. They talk to people in there and they start dropping little subtle cues that this other person doesn't know what they're doing. The guy who's leading this, he's a moron. I know what's best, and this is what we should be doing here. And you start collecting yourself together, a little network of people, and you make this group of allies that now can withstand and resist. So you didn't necessarily use your power base, you made a power base. And now you can stand against that leader. And that is that internal politics, that internal power struggle, that dynamic that can be very detrimental to most organizations. Also, counterpower. Maybe we're working in a manufacturing plant and we belong to a union. That union has counterpower. Because if the leadership, management starts treating us unfairly, we don't have to raise the stink at work. We go talk to the union. The union raises the stink. So sometimes the people that are working for you may belong to unions, and that is a source of counterpower. And while it originally was put in place to keep organizations from abusing their employees, it can be used in a way of abuse as it is, all by itself. Where now this union decides what organizations that work in this particular manufacturing sector are going to do. And it's not necessarily founded upon what's good for the people, good for the workers, what's fair, what's ethical. It's based on that union's own desire for power. So a counterpower can be beneficial. It can also be detrimental. As with most things in leadership. There are power tactics, and Black et al. Noted there are 7 various tactics that leaders can employ in exercising the power, and it relates primarily to decision making. There are, let's see, controlling access to information. If I exercise my power through limiting your ability to get the information you need to do the task you've been assigned, that's what I'm doing. I'm applying that in a political way. I'm making it so you're not able to do your job without me. Because now I'm the avenue you have to the information that you should normally have access to. It doesn't stop there. Controlling access to persons. So there might be people in the organization who have a wealth of knowledge that could benefit you as you work on the widgets and you're working on the engineering for that widget. And you know this person has the knowledge and expertise that you need. But I make it so you cannot go talk to them. Now I'm limiting your access. You have to go through me. What am I doing? I'm using politics to manipulate the situation to my advantage. That's basically when the internal power dynamic inside organizations turns into a negative form of politics. When I'm doing this for my own feeling of superiority, when I'm doing this so I can exercise control and grind my thumb more into you, or I can limit your access to what you need, making you have to come to me for it. Make myself seem more important than I really am. People do this all the time. There is, of course, selective use of objective criteria to reduce opinions. So we're on a team, and I'm going to apply this tactic. I know that there are several data sheets or data sets that you should have access to. But I know that 2 of them are going to take this team in a direction I don't want it to go. So I only bring you the one. Don't tell you about the others. I hide them from you. I limit your access to them. I now have manipulated that team into making the decision I wanted them to make by limiting their access to that knowledge. It happens when I limit you being able to go talk to other people who are experts. I'm controlling, I'm manipulating the decision-making process. And to me, that's unethical. Because I think the best decisions are made when people have the ability to get what they need, to talk to whoever they need to talk to be able to come up with the feedback that's going to be best for the team. Because I'm not there to lead so I look good. I'm there to lead because we got a mission to do. So let's do it the best we can, which means I put my own pride on hold and I put the team as being more important than me. I think that's the essence of servant leadership I like the most, is you put the people that report to you individually and the team as a collective as actually being more important than yourself. So you make sure they've got the resources and the knowledge. You make sure they have access to things, okay? If I know you're working on a project, and I know everyone here is supposed to be, and I know that there's information available in a particular index or several indices, and I look through your rough draft and I don't mention that to you, I'm limiting your ability. But if I say, you know what, go to Google, do all the searching you want, go Google Scholar, spend time at Clear Library Online, see what you can find. Oh, and by the way, if you check out the CSR indices, you might find something. Now I'm opening that gate up to you. And I'm seeing you as more important than me. Because you see, at the end of the day, I don't teach because I need the knowledge. I have the knowledge. And I know where to get the knowledge when I need it. It's up to me now to give you that ability. To not just get people that can hear what's told them or repeat what they read, but they can go find additional sources. They back up, confirm, disprove, whatever needs to be done. And I love that about teaching, is I get to empower people. Moving along, another tactic is controlling the agenda. When you lead a meeting, you typically have an agenda. And by controlling the agenda in a meeting, it's much like controlling just the generalized version of what the agenda is. I make it about my goals. We're not talking about goals that may benefit you. We're talking about goals that will benefit me. Because if this team does really good and succeeds, I'm up for promotion. And that's all I see. But if instead I come to the agenda and I list out as every possible thing that we can, and then I open the floor for people to give feedback, positive and negative, and I'm not filtering that, and I create a psychologically safe environment for these individuals to be a part of, we establish the agenda together. That's why I think that a team leader should sit down with their team and say, listen, we need a mission and a vision. We need 3 months, 6 months, and a year down the road. Where do we want to be? Now, the organization does 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, because organizations are dealing at the strategic level. When you're dealing at the team level, that's operational. And so you're dealing usually in months, days and months. But I want the team involved. I want them to own it. I want them to know part of me is in that mission and vision. Why? Because they're going to do even more to fulfill it. If you help create something, you're more invested in it. You care more about it. So that's what I want my team to do. I want them invested in it. So I have to get them to help me construct it. Next, we have using outside experts who agree with the leader. So we got a project going on. And instead of bringing people up from the team to talk about different aspects, I bring in experts who actually agree with the direction I want to take this team in this project. So now I've removed the ability for there to be constructive dissent. And constructive dissent, if you've taken Management 4950, is essential in creating psychological safety for teams. So what I should do is I should bring people up from the team who are skilled and knowledgeable in that particular area and say, listen, what do you think? What could we do better? What could we do worse? What's your feedback? Give it to me straight. If you think we're headed the wrong way, please tell me. But no, what I do is I bring in somebody else who is just going to mimic what I have already said. So I'm manipulating again. I'm manipulating the team. Not good. There's bureaucratic gamesmanship. That's another tactic, and that's playing internal politics to gain an advantage. So I know that you need resources A, B, and C. Someone over here needs resources E, D, and Q, or whatever. I put myself into the position, I'm the only source you can come to for those resources. I limit your ability to go to the actual source of those resources, and I play a politics game. I go and talk to the people who control those resources and say, if anyone from my team comes and asks you, don't help them. They need to go through me. Now, there's other ways of wording that, but that's the gist of what would be said. So now I made it, not only have I said, you can't go talk to them, I've talked to that person and I've played that bureaucratic game and I said, listen, I'm the leader of that team. I'm the one that's gonna make the judgment calls. I know what the organization wants. I know what's best. So if they come asking you for stuff, you need to tell me because then they're gonna get punished because that's not what they're supposed to do. Now, what if I'm in a meeting and you're working on the widget and you need something from a source and you could go talk to them, but I've created this environment. Now you're stuck. You can't move forward. You're dependent, codependent on me. Some leaders like that. I wonder, what are they thinking? Because you're not going to get a good final product that way. And you're not going to have a team that's willing to work with you ever again. So stop the bureaucracy. I tell you what, I'm a professor. My boss is the dean. You have a problem with how I teach? Feel free, talk to me, talk to her. It's fine. I'm transparent. I actually would go to her and say, listen, I made a mistake. And she goes, yes, everybody makes mistakes. Don't worry about it. Almost the attitude of, why are you telling me this? Because she's really a nice lady. Dean Kelly's really, she's a wonderful woman to work for. But it's like, I'll tattle on myself. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm transparent. So if I do that, why would I be upset if someone from one of my classes goes and says, hey, Liz, Dr. Brian Gagnon is, well, not doing this right. She might hear it and say, oh, you know what? You don't have a leg to stand on. I can watch the videos. He puts them on YouTube. They're on Zoom. No problem. Or she says, you know what? Let me take in consideration. That's between you and her. Now, when she talks to me about it, now that's between the three of us. But it's okay if you go talk to my supervisor. I'm not against that. Why would I? Tell you why. If I was hiding what I was doing. But because I try to be transparent, it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. And lastly, a tactic is coalitions and alliances to develop strength in numbers. Okay. This goes back to the example where you and I were leaders. We get put on a task force and I'm in charge. You develop a coalition, an alliance of people that will stand up against me. You do this through the use of politics and internal power dynamics. You've created an environment now where you have the strength, not the leader. That's just as dangerous as the leader having the strength and not you. This is why I try to let everybody have strength. Why I try to not hoard the authority. Why I try not to hoard the power. But I like my team to also have the ability to engage in things. Because now they don't have to make an alliance. I've already created us as an alliance, as a team. We don't need to have factions. Because now we go into social identity theory, and that is the in-group and out-group. And it goes into social exchange theory, which is, of course, the in-group and out-group. And one group is pushing the other group away. The alliance is pushing away those that didn't join the alliance. And now you've got internal fighting and strife and in conflict. Interpersonal conflict comes out of that. Nothing good's going to come from that team. They're too busy fighting. So it's a tactic that leaders also use, where a leader will befriend somebody on the team, quotes, air quotes, befriend, for the purpose of manipulating them and get them to create an alliance that sides with the leader. So now I'm using that internal power play, that gamesmanship, but for my own agenda, and almost in a way that doesn't look like I'm doing it. Because I went and we talked over coffee one day. You agree with what I'm saying. You go and bring together a coalition. They think they're following you, when in all regards, you have them following me for my own personal agenda. That's dangerous. That is very dangerous. So you can see, as you can see, some of the power tactics can become unethical and thus should be avoided by an ethical leader. If there is a question of ethicalness about what you're doing, if you have a moment of thought where you're like, am I being fair to everyone? I don't think so. you need to back up and you need to reassess the situation. Because you'll get more accomplished being ethical and being fair and being equitable than playing these little games. I've seen little games like this destroy organizations, teams, groups, whatever, and it's not good. Let me pull something up over here that I think I should have. Let's see where we're at with this. Okay, we'll get through a couple more slides. Yeah, we'll get through about maybe 3 more and then we'll call it a night. Really? Of course, why not? Oh, there's working again. Okay, so Black et al. Presented numerous approaches to use, oh boy, I need to correct that sentence. Approaches to use when it comes to power, and they offered rules to ensure ethical leadership. Okay, we're going to go through it by power base here, power type. Referent power. If you're using referent power and you want to make sure that you're going to be ethical, you treat your subordinates fairly. You treat them equitably. You defend the interests of the people on your team, because each one has their interests. Okay? You defend those. You need to be sensitive to your subordinates' needs and feelings. This is that relational aspect of leadership, that didactic, developed relationship. You know their needs, you know their feelings, because you're always talking to them and you're actively listening to them. So you want to support them in that. You want to encourage them in that. You want to protect them from people that would erode that about them. You select subordinates similar to oneself. So if you are an ethically driven leader, you want a team of people who are equally interested in doing the job ethically. Don't bring people in who are willing to take the shortcut, who are willing to harm other people for their own agenda. You don't want those people. There were 2 teams in my military intelligence company in the Army. I led up one, Sergeant C led up the other. Now, my team, we were the rejects. We were the unpopular, we weren't the jocks. We were treated quite poorly by the other team. Somehow we wound up with more awards, a better performance record, and had made a good name for ourselves when compared to the other team. Because all they did, they had infighting, they were always cutting each other down, there was always some form of harassment going on. It was not a healthy place to be. Now, my team, we goofed around and we joked and stuff, but we knew the limits. And we also knew, hey, we're not really being serious about this. And we made sure people's feelings weren't being hurt. Because you gotta have fun too, but you don't want to hurt people in the process. But I had a team, and they were a lot like I was. They wanted to be part of the process. They wanted to give feedback. They wanted to feel important. They wanted to do things right. So we did that together as a team. And we had more awards, a better record, and even going out to desert training in California, we ran 4 missions. We died 2 missions. That's a downer. And we survived 2 missions. The other team died all 4. Yet they were all the jocks. Now, in my particular field, back in my days in the Army, surviving 2 out of 4 missions got us an award, because that was phenomenal. So you want people like yourself. You need to engage in role modeling. I tried to set the example. Anytime I've been a leader, I've tried to set the example for those that reported to me. I wanted them to be able to imitate me in a way that would keep them going good ethically, keep them going good when it came to their performance reviews. When they were transferred to another team, they would be a star performer. So I role modeled that. Just like changing the oil in that tracked vehicle. I got down and did it first. I was the first one ready and willing to jump in and do something because I wanted them to know, one, I was ready and willing to do it. And two, I wanted them to be ready and willing to do it. And I couldn't get that far if I wasn't already there doing it. So I led by example. Okay, let's look at expert power. You need to promote the image of expertise. You want people to imitate that. Not just the image of expertise, but that they actually have the expertise. But when they talk, they sound authoritative. They sound knowledgeable. Maintain credibility. Act confident and decisive. When you are in leadership and you make a decision, one, make it with your team. And when you get to that point where you got the decision, stand by it. But don't be so stubborn as to once you make a decision and you implement it, if you realize, oops, we made a mistake. No, go back to the drawing board and start over. Admit to your mistakes and start over when you need to. But you don't do that just because, oh, the other way sounds like it'd be more fun. No, make sure it's for something that's safety or for the purpose why the team is there. Something that is actually existential, dealing with the existence of that team. That, go back and change. Stay informed. A good leader is a knowledgeable leader. You want to be a source of information, especially when you're using expert power. So avail yourself to information. Learn on your own time about things that pertain to your team. This way, your team will see that and they can follow you as a role model, and they too can go get information and become more knowledgeable. Because now I don't have to be the only source of information. I'm a source of information, but more importantly, because of my hunger to learn more about this purpose, this task we're on, now they've become more hungry and they're getting themselves educated in it. Once again, following an example. Recognize employee concerns. Avoid threatening subordinate self-esteem. I saw the other team in my Army unit threaten people's self-esteem in the name of fun and humor. I, by that time, had already performed in front of thousands of people, and I knew that was not the right way to engage in a hilarious moment. Oh, me and my team, we had fun. But people didn't have to walk away feeling bad about themselves. Legitimate power. Be cordial and polite. When you have legitimate power, don't lord it over people. Don't be domineering. Be confident. Be clear and follow up to verify understanding. So you got to follow up not only to make sure your team understands, but that you understand, and you're demonstrating to them that you do understand. You're reinforcing the fact that you've got some knowledge, and you're also verifying that they're getting the knowledge. So you need to always follow up. Make sure the request is appropriate. Don't ask somebody in your team to do something that is unethical, inappropriate, dangerous, harassing. If you yourself are not willing to go do it, don't ask someone else to go do it. I like to watch the TV show MASH from the 70s and 80s. And the head nurse, Major Margaret Houlihan, decided to go into a very dangerous situation where there are bombs going off because she said, I'm the head nurse, and I'm not going to send one of my nurses to go someplace that frightens me. I'm going to go. That really is one of the essential things about being a leader. Don't send somebody to go do something you yourself don't want to go do. Explain the reasons for the request. If you're requesting people to do something, make sure they got all the information. We need to go, I need you to go do this. Would you be willing to go do this? We need it because the tasks our team is working on, this is part of what we need to get done. Let them know why they need to go. And then let them even know why them. Well, I think that you're best suited for this because you've already got knowledge in this area, and you got experience here in this, and you've proven yourself, and I think you'd be good for that. Build them up to the process. Follow proper channels. Don't usurp the way things are supposed to be done for safety's sake, just to get something done quicker. Follow the proper channels. If you've got to do service on a piece of machinery, make sure that you shut it off like it's supposed to be. There's always a procedure list. You shut it off. You put these tags on there. You make it so they can't turn it back on. There's little locks and safety things. You follow every procedure. You don't jump anything dealing with safety, whether it's physical safety, psychological safety. No, don't skip through steps. Exercise power regularly. Don't just punish people at times. Don't just reward people at times. Be consistent. Let people understand who you are and that you're going to be like that next week, next month, next year. You're not just nice to them when you're in a good mood. You treat them fairly and equitably and humanely and pleasantly, and you're polite, even if you're in a bad mood. Enforce compliance. Once again, this goes into favorites. If you've got a favorite person and you let that person skate by and not have to do things, and this person is your least favorite person on the team, and you're always giving them the bad work, that's a reverse form of favoritism applied to them and favoritism applied to this person. Not fair. Everybody on the team should be capable to do the tasks that they're given, and they're not selected because they're disliked by the leader. Be sensitive to subordinates' concerns. When you're using reward power, verify compliance. Make sure somebody's earned the reward before you give it to them. Otherwise, they got something for nothing. And if you don't do that with every single person on the team, now you're showing favoritism. Make feasible, reasonable requests. Make only ethical, proper requests. Offer rewards desired by subordinates. I'm not going to offer my team free donuts on Tuesday morning when what my team really could benefit from is extra time off to spend with their family. Make sure it's something that they truly want and that they need. Offer only credible rewards. If I don't have the ability to give that reward, if I don't have access to the resources for that reward, don't offer it. Because your credibility will be shot. Coercive power. Inform subordinates of rules and penalties. Warn before punishing. Remember I told you some types of industries like the military, you do have to use coercive power. Once again, I like to combine that with servant leadership, but that's just me. But warn before you punish. If somebody's messing up, just don't jump straight to the punishment. Give them a warning. Start with a verbal warning. Move to a written warning the next time they do it. Then, if they do it a third time, then you do the punishment. They've been warned twice, so the third time when they do it, they actually have earned that punishment. Administer punishment consistently and uniformly. No favoritism. Understand the situation before acting. Just because one person comes and tells you this is how it is, this is what happened, don't buy that as being the gospel truth. Talk to other people who were there. Get their perspectives. Did you know at a scene of an accident, a cop will talk to as many people as they can about what they saw, because one person is not going to remember all the truth. But you get a number of people, the more you get telling you about the situation, the better you are equipped to find out what actually happened. So, don't go by one person's word. Maintain credibility. Fit the punishment to the infraction. Don't go to a reduction of pay and rank or position or whatever if all the person did was show up 15 minutes late to work. In that case, maybe they should stay 15 minutes late to make up that time. That sounds fair. But then tomorrow, when you come in 15 minutes late, I have to do the same thing for you. Got to be consistent. Punish in private. In the civilian sector, punishing in private is a good practice. In the military, usually we got punished in front of people because it's this team environment. And so if one person messes up, the whole team messed up. It's not that way in the civilian world. So we're not going to go that way with this. always, if you got to counsel somebody, you gotta punish them, gotta write them up, gotta warn them, gotta issue a punishment, do it privately. You don't want that person's self-esteem to be destroyed in the process. You can use that time of punishment to build them back up, to help them become better and stronger. But don't tear them down in front of people. They don't deserve that. They're not in the military. And that's where we're going to end tonight. So on Thursday, we'll pick up here. And before I close out, does anybody have questions? I know Tyree is live in concert and Brady is online. Do either of you two have any questions for me tonight about this?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, you have a good night. I'm going to stop this recording so the video can process, which will probably take 20 minutes. And let me do this and no.